Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very dear friend, a very senior entrepreneur and leader from the world of supply chain and logistics, a fellow member of the YPO from New Delhi, India, Mr. Vineet Agarwal. Vineet, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ashutosh. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Vineet is the managing director of the Transport Corporation of India, which is TCI. He's a board member of several publicly listed companies and other notable institutions, including Somani Ceramics Limited, SRF Limited, as well as the Indian Institute of Health and Management Research, which is IIHMR. And he has been a global board member of the YPO. And these are just a few of his achievements that I could fit in to a short introduction. So, Vineet, before we talk about supply chain and logistics, TCI is a very old and established company. Tell me a little bit about TCI and what has been your most defining moment in your company.
Yes, Ashutosh. I think the company started in 1958 when my grandfather started it with just one man, one office, one truck from Calcutta to Bombay. And the first truck that he sort of hired, he borrowed money, and that truck caught fire.
Oh, wow.
And so he actually ended up borrowing more money so that he could pay off everyone and restart the service.
Wow.
Now, that established him as a person who was really, really customer centric and really someone who wanted to serve the nation as a whole through the means of logistics and supply chain. And since the organization, of course, has grown quite a lot, and right now we move about 2.5% of India's GDP
Absolutely.
by value of cargo every year.
Mm.
And we have air, road, rail, sea operations, warehousing, cold chain, all kinds of logistics that we manage with close to 27,000 people, out of which 20,000 plus are outsourced.
Mm.
Uh, what has happened in terms of my personal journey is that when I joined the business almost 30 years ago now, right after college in the US, was that the business was just one single business. It was just one entity.
Yeah.
And we had just come up from a family separation.
Mm.
We were under heavy pressure to really pay off some of our debts as well as grow the business. So at that time, we sort of doubled down, my father and I, at that instance in 96 or so, and started several new ventures related to the logistics field only. We started an express business, a shipping business, and fortunately, we were able to even do a joint venture with a Japanese company for logistics of Toyota in India.
Wow.
Now, these were the defining moments because I think at that point in time, I was very raw and we were struggling with a lot of issues. In fact, our house was also mortgaged to that extent that we didn't have a place. But we came out of it because of the fact that we were able to channelize the thinking that these are the areas of growth. And most importantly, which we'll talk about later, is how to professionalize the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was, I think, the most defining to really
Amazing.
change the business from one single entity to
Hmm.
now what it is.
Absolutely. Thank you. And what an amazing journey. But there's another aspect of you that I have seen, for many, many years. In addition to all your business acumen, you also have given back a lot to global bodies. We've been part of several organizations like YPO, of course, ASSOCHAM, YLC at AIMA. How have these platforms, which take a lot of your time, influenced your own personal and professional growth?
My personal belief in this is that to really give back, you should not wait. You People think that okay, after a certain age, when either I'll have more time, or when I'll have more money, I should start giving back. My personal philosophy has been start giving back as soon as you can, when you can. So even as a 16, 17-year-old, I used to go to the villages, our villages in where we used to do work in our charitable organizations. And then subsequently, after I came back from college and started working, again, got very involved in our foundation, and then simultaneously started getting involved in leadership organizations like YPO, ASOCHAM, etc. Because I felt that if I can learn now, I can give back more in the future. So
Right.
the networking that you can do at that early age, you can use that network for betterment in the future
Hmm.
more.
Hmm.
Not when you're 55, 60, 70, and then you
Hmm.
start doing those things.
Absolutely.
So it was a slightly different philosophy, and which definitely meant a lot, some sacrifices. I think, from a personal life perspective,
Yeah.
not from a family perspective, but definitely from a personal time perspective. But I think it was in the end, it's worth it because the
Worth it.
satisfaction you get is just phenomenal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's now talk about your core business, which is supply chain and logistics. My first question is, how has TCI embraced digital transformation to streamline logistics and supply chain operations? And you very modestly said you move only 2.5% of the GDP of the country, but that's humongous.
Yeah. Nothing can work now without IT,
Hmm.
IT systems. And in the 70s, we actually figured that out. And of
Hmm.
course, I was not part of the organization, but my family
Hmm.
was. And they said we started with the IBM punching card machines
Hmm.
in 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And so the journey of really incorporating IT systems, computer systems into our day-to-day operations has been from very, very long.
Hmm.
And it continues. We have about 7, 8 years ago set up a team center of excellence
Hmm.
for logistics. The COE is essentially focused only on digital transformation.
Hmm.
What are the new things we can do in the space of logistics? First is that I think there's a lot of base level things that have changed in the last 10, 15 years.
Hmm.
I can share one small example.
Yeah.
About 25 years ago, when we formed the joint venture with Mitsui for handling the logistics of Toyota,
Hmm.
Toyota, works on just in time.
Yeah.
Now, just in time means that the parts have to reach just in time. When I told them, okay, the truck will reach a few hours earlier, 8 hours or something, and wait for when you need the parts, they said, no, 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 no. That's still inventory on wheels. We wanted to reach 2 hours before we want those parts.
Amazing. Hmm.
Now, in 99, 2000, there were no GPS.
Yes.
So we set up a whole system where we did surveys of roads to even to know where the bumps are on each road
Hmm.
so that we know where the truck can get delayed. And we were operating in the 2000s, 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, at 99.9% service
Wow.
levels.
Hmm.
Uh, the story here is that now GPS is ubiquitous. It's there
Yeah.
everywhere, everything. From your home delivery for your food to your home delivery for now in 10 minutes, whatever you want. It
Hmm.
cannot work without GPS.
Hmm.
So that's become a hygiene. Similarly, there are lots of other things that
Hmm.
have become hygiene in our industry. Uh,
Hmm.
However, there are new things that are coming up, which will become slowly hygiene, but more importantly, also a differentiator for you as an organization.
Hmm.
So digital transformation is not something is not a new word for us. In its various avatars, we've done some amount of digital transformation in this last
Hmm.
4 decades.
Amazing. And given the fact that you brought this in so early in the game, I'm sure you're very early in the game as far as AI is concerned. And therefore, my question is, what role is AI currently playing in logistics optimization for you?
So I think any firm that says that AI is not being used is about a year ago, I would say that is true.
Hmm.
Because year and a half ago, we were also struggling with thinking on, we were doing some level of algorithmic workflow process automation,
Hmm.
or some level of machine learning, but not AI really in its true sense.
Hmm.
So about a year and a half ago, someone said, I was very honest and brutal, saying, no, we're not doing anything in AI.
Hmm.
However, now it has gotten much easier to do things with the tools that are available. In that sense, we have in the Center of Excellence, we are doing a lot of projects using several tools,
Hmm.
from programming tools to even optimization tools, where we are able to predict For example, today, if you've ordered something on a food app, you get updates that okay, it's here, the person is going to get delivered
Mm,
in the next few minutes. Now, imagine if that journey is for 7 days. If you are
mm,
sending a cargo from Jammu and all the way to Tuticorin. Now, in that journey, the estimated time of arrival, the ETA, is
mm,
going to change every 2 hours because
mm.
the road conditions are different. There's the police stop you once in a while, or you're crossing borders,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth.
Mm,
So their prediction of ETA gets even more tougher.
mm,
We've built a model internally where we have put in all the variables, made various layers of information
mm,
that are now feeding to create an ETA. We are using that internally. We're testing it, but that's where we're using as an example AI rapidly now in our organization. We've also set up some Gen AI related tools inside the company where fishing for information earlier could have been tough. For example, an employee who attended, if I wanted to know, okay, when did this particular employee attend this specific training program, and what was his score and what was his supervisor's score, I
mm.
have to go into his file and
Yeah.
look at all that information. Now I have to just do a query.
Mm,
So that's the Gen AI setup that we've done. Or, for example, what was the rate between of a truck moving from Calcutta to Vishakhapatnam in May 13th of May
mm,
2020?
mm. Wow.
Now that information you just have to like Gen AI and you'll get the
Mm,
information. So that's the kind
amazing.
of stuff we've started
Amazing.
incorporating. Of course, a lot of other projects are
Yeah,
already
yeah. And that must have made decision making so much more comfortable and easier.
is getting there, Ashutosh. I think we are, if I say we have done it, no, it's we are still getting there.
Yeah. The other question, Vineet, I had from you was that given this massive fleets of trucks and so many other vehicles that you use, and given the fact that you're such a forward-thinking organization and individual, what are some of the key initiatives TCI has taken around sustainable logistics and reducing the carbon footprint?
It's a very important subject that we've incorporated
Yeah.
into our business, and we are aiming for a net zero in the next decade, under a decade.
Mm,
Scope 1 and 2 is not very difficult for us simply because the number of trucks we own are not very high, but we operate a lot of vendor trucks and a lot of trucks on spot hire from the market.
mm,
Beyond that, we have a fleet of ships also.
mm,
We also operate rail networks and use a lot of the rails services. What we are saying is that let's start thinking from several angles because this is a thing that you cannot solve just by doing one thing. One of the things we are doing is asking our customers to look at multimodal logistics a lot more. The carbon emission for a truck is the highest compared to after you look at rail or you look at sea.
mm,
We are saying, why don't we move things by sea or a combination of road, rail, sea? And we have the network. So we today for our customers moving products on containers from North India to let's say Kandla port by rail, put it onto a ship in Kandla and which takes it to let's say Tuticorin. And in Tuticorin we'll take it by truck and deliver it to the factory.
mm,
This is something we're already doing for the last several years.
mm,
Um, when companies start shifting, that's automatically scope 3 will start getting affected. On the scope 1 and 2, we are building warehouses which have using lesser carbon footprint as possible, having solar panels, but more importantly, moving to alternative fuels, trucks which are operating on alternative fuels. Some of them are LNG, CNG, and we believe that in the short hauls, that's the inside the cities or in the 100-kilometer range, everything will move to EV in the next 5, 7 years.
mm,
And in the middle haul, you'll have a combination of LNG, CNG, and maybe some amount of EV.
mm,
And at the long hauls, you will probably have LNG and maybe hydrogen in the next 7
mm,
years.
mm.
So this is what we are seeing in terms of today's technology. Of course,
Hmm.
these parameters could change
Yeah.
as technology evolves.
Yeah. In fact, you already answered my next question. I was going to ask you about the transition to EVs, but let me ask you some other question then. And that is that given the kind of amazing work that you're doing, what is the kind of innovation or disruption in this space that excites you the most?
Well, I think the whole aspect of home delivery is just phenomenal
Hmm.
because that is transformed the way people think, how they can buy and consume. That definitely has a lot of impact on the supply chains at the back end. Because if you want a delivery in your home in 10 minutes or
Yeah.
15 minutes, or in or an Amazon or a Flipkart kind of a situation in 2 days or 3 days, you need to have very robust, resilient, as well as I would say evolving supply chains.
Hmm.
And they operate differently. So what's been exciting for me is that to see this journey
Hmm.
that we are now able to deliver without any issues in these time frames and manage the back-end supply chains more efficiently.
Hmm.
And we saw some of that got tested during COVID as well. And we were able to then realign ourselves. Or even some of the conflicts that happen on and off, we see that supply chains have to readjust very quickly. Um, in We run warehouses for some of the quick commerce guys, where at the fulfillment level, which are not just regular warehouses but also cold chain warehouses. So those are the warehouses where, let's say, you place an order of an ice cream, and that comes to you either from first it goes from the warehouse to a dark store, and the dark store then makes the delivery. So every day we are making deliveries to the dark store. There could be 100, 200, 300 in every store.
Hmm.
Um, then on the e-commerce side, we run warehouses for companies there. So as a country, we have evolved this model very rapidly.
Hmm.
Um, and it is going to lead to a lot of changes in a lot of businesses as well. For example, a lot of the younger generation today is just ordering food from outside,
Correct.
or they will pick up something when they are working. They will not cook at home.
Hmm.
If they have to cook, they'll buy almost ready-made stuff.
Yeah.
So, do you know there are some real estate companies that are setting up apartments without kitchens?
Hmm.
Because if youngsters are not going to use the kitchen, they just
Hmm.
need a microwave or a refrigerator. Why do you need to have a full-fledged?
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's the kind of impact because of logistics we are going to see in a lot of other industries.
Amazing. Amazing. What a great response. Thank you. But you also spoke about the way this whole system, the ecosystem is changing. And I'd love to get your perspective on how aligned is government policy today. And I know you play a role in as advisor to several committees, etc. How aligned is government today when it comes to technology-led transformation in logistics and supply chains?
In the last 10, 15 years, I think the government has done a lot of activity to really bring up this subject simply because the cost of logistics in India is quite high. And the intent is to reduce this. And one of the ways would be multimodal logistics, as I talked about,
Mm.
which is not just reducing the cost, but also the carbon footprint. Apart from that, from a technology perspective, government has set up something called ULIP, the
Mhm.
Unified Logistics Interface Platform, where all movements that are happening in the country are all visible at that level.
Mm.
Whether it is the customs, whether it is trucking, whether it is the finance ministry with its with your documentation, um, or the trucks, the Ministry of Highways. So every detail around logistics is now coming on this singular platform, which is really good. We are seeing response from the government more active. As a country, we still have a long way to go when it comes to things like infrastructure. I always say that we build for the past, not for the future. Because by the time we build, some infrastructure is already full.
Sorry for correct.
We need to really think about how to build infrastructure for the future,
Hmm.
which means that the investment that will happen, not just infrastructure, but also in IT systems or technology related to how the government views this sector, will be
Hmm.
imperative.
Hmm.
And I'm very positive that what has happened in the last decade or so has been transformational, and it's been audacious in some ways. And I think uh, the momentum should continue.
Amazing. And yet, when we talk about the global supply chain, everything that has happened in China and India catching up very quickly, what global trends in logistics and supply chains do you think India needs to adopt further? And you already told me one, we need to plan for for the future, not yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I think India is at the forefront of many of these changes.
Yeah.
What's happening very fast, and what you just alluded to, is the fact that we are now aligning with the global value chains quite fast as a country,
Hmm. Hmm.
which essentially means that companies are making their supply chains more diverse, more broader. So earlier, with COVID, supply chains got tested. So instead of having a longer supply chain, you wanted a more compressed supply chain, and you want a more in-depth supply chain, which
Hmm.
means that you needed to know where your tier one supplier, tier two supplier, tier three suppliers are, because you're as strong as your weakest link only.
Correct.
So now we are seeing that supply chains are getting more diverse in India perspective, and alignment to the global value chains means that our EXIM trade is increasing quite rapidly,
Hmm.
which means that as a country, when we are talking about imports and exports, we need to be much faster compared to our lot of the competing countries,
Hmm.
because they can, get stuff into their country much faster in many cases, or get out of the country much faster.
Hmm.
So it is one area that we are definitely, from an international perspective,
Hmm.
the alignment as well as catching up is critical.
Hmm. And is there any area that you think policymakers need to further support a digital first logistics policy?
Well, I think pushing formalization of the economy, and this is a broader subject, not
Yeah.
specific to
Yeah.
logistics, is automatically pushing the agenda for digitization
Correct.
more and more.
Hmm.
Because today there's a lot of operators that are, under the radar. They don't file taxes, or they're not really in the system.
Hmm.
Now, as and when every part of the supply chain, even at the local level, gets into the system or gets formalized, then we'll see that the efficiency and the productivity of the system will really, really go up tremendously. And that's where digitization will start playing its role completely. So broadly speaking, formalization is the most critical part in terms of what agenda the government should keep pushing.
Very well said. Vineet, you're also a big supporter and investor in startups relating to supply chains. What is your view on the supply chain startup system or scene in India?
So on the logistics and supply chain, I think one of the reasons why we went to a board about 10 years ago and said, look, a lot has started to happen. We need to start looking at what's happening. And we
Hmm.
only do that when we start investing, because then we can see the deal flow.
Yeah.
The board was very visionary in that sense to say, yes, let's do it. And so we've been investing in the last decade or so into logistics and supply chain startups. But other than that, in the family office side, we've been investing also in that space.
Hmm. Hmm.
What is happening is clearly something that we are very proud of as a nation, because it's leading to huge amount of changes in our in the way that we run businesses, as well as the psyche of people, of how we operate as older family businesses,
Hmm.
because we need to be more agile.
Hmm.
We need to change, as well as we need to see how the new generation views certain types of businesses.
Hmm.
So there have been some phenomenal examples in our country or in the logistics
Yeah.
space, which enables the quick commerce and other things
Correct.
that we're seeing
Hmm.
and we're so happy about.
Very interesting.
So similarly, I think in every area, we've seen the startup world really having a positive impact.
Hmm.
The path to profitability is always a question. I
Yeah.
think is something that everyone starts talking about, which is fine. I think a lot of companies will get to that stage for them to be really
Hmm.
um, global challengers. I think any support that is needed or required for the sector should continue.
Very interesting. Time for two more questions for you. My next question is that, you have more than 28,000 people working. And when I was reading about you and preparing for this conversation, you have do a lot of work in upskilling your workforce in collaboration with the NSDC. Tell me a little bit more about this.
Yes. I think the challenge in India from employment perspective is really employability. And the other factor is mobility. When we want to get boys and girls who have just graduated, we find them that they are not necessarily employable. Many of them, unfortunately, did not even know who the president of India was,
Mm.
or where certain cities are
Yeah.
capitals of states, etc., etc. So that, and then mobility in the sense that where jobs are, there are not enough people. So if you have to take people from some states and move them there, there is always going to be some resistance and challenges. So we felt that the only way to do this is train people and get them to that state and standard that we can use in our organization, but also generally speaking, how they can be useful in changing the face of the industry. So we run an institute for logistics, where we have centers where we take boys and girls from villages really after class 12 or after graduation and put them through a training program which is NSDC certified,
Yeah.
and then they are employed by various organizations in our field.
Mm.
Apart from that, we also on a continuous basis have academies across the country where almost every employee goes through some level of training in about 15 to 18 months, in every 15 to 18 months in their career.
Amazing.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
We also have some online courses, etc., available, but that worked for a bit during COVID. But now I think physical face to face is the
Absolutely.
only way that we are seeing that the impact is there.
Fascinating. And my last question for you, Vineet. Um, you've already spoken a lot to me about what's happening in logistics and global supply chains. I want to ask you, how do you view India's potential as a global logistics hub? And what is the role you expect TCI to play?
As I said, India is integrating into the global value
Yeah.
chains. We know from a China plus one strategy, there are companies that are coming to India not
Mm.
just to set up their base for production, but also viewing it as a large consumption economy. From both those perspectives, it's very, very clear that India in the next decade, next 2 decades, is going to be the hub of whether it is innovation, whether it is talent, whether it is growth. And automatically, when we are talking about all of those things, it automatically becomes a hub for logistics as well.
Mm.
I talked about EXIM trade increasing. So
Yeah.
automatically, we'll see work, as in trade, increasing between us and different parts of the world. So I'm very confident that one is the macro side, and on the infrastructure side, the government is focused on building roads, building ports, multimodal locations, and these are all the large infrastructure spend the government is talking about. I think 3-4% of the GDP is on a year-on-year basis is going to be really the game changer from a logistics perspective also.
Mm.
So I have no doubt that India is already in some ways a
Yeah.
hub, but emerge as a bigger hub in the next
Mm.
decade.
Mm. Well said. And on that note, Vineet, I just want to say what a great conversation this has been. I've always known about your amazing company, but I didn't know that you move such a huge percentage, 2.5% of the GDP of this nation, which is massive. Thank you also for talking to me about the way you have been giving back. I love your philosophy of give back early rather than wait till you are in your 50s and 60s to give back. I think you've done a lot. And then we had a fascinating conversation on supply chain and logistics, and we covered a lot of very interesting ground. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.